Hello, once again, everyone. I'm your host, Ray Shasho. Welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends, brought to you by the Rockstar Chronicles, Series 1, my new book featuring over 45 intimate conversations with the greatest music legends the world will ever know. It's available now at bookbaby.com and amazon.com. Well, the James Gang is one of classic rock's earliest power trios. Though the band's lineup changed numerous times during its 7-year existence, rock historians and fans cite the lineup of Joe Walsh, Jim Fox, and Dale Peters as the James Gang's definitive lineup. The James Gang became an influential source for decades after the band's demise in 1976. Its most famous member, of course, Joe Walsh, left the band early on to join the Eagles, and his replacement, Mr. Tommy Bolin, later quit to join Deep Purple, never giving the band a proper fighting chance at becoming superstars. I still think they were superstars. The band hit its stride with James Gang Rides Again. The lineup of Walsh, Fox, and Peters proved to be a hit success as the album went gold, peaking at number 20 on Billboard. With the addition of keyboards, the band's hard boogie and groove found new heights on Rides Again's collection of hard rockers and sensitive ballads. The riff-heavy track Funk 49, a sort of follow-up to Yer Album's Funk number 48, hit number 40 on Billboard, and today has one of the most memorable classic rock riffs. In 1971, the James Gang kept their songwriting energy vibrant with the release of Thirds. The album once again hit Billboard at number 27, while the instantly recognizable single Walk Away stopped at number 51. Things were going great for the band, and the future looked good until the winter of 1971, when Joe Walsh, the true driving force of the James Gang, left the group. But in the late 1990s, the James Gang reunited with Peters, Fox, and Walsh for the occasional show, including a 1996 election rally for President Bill Clinton at Cleveland State University. Please welcome the only James Gang member that has appeared on every album, drummer Jimmy Fox, to Interviewing the Legends. Hello, Jimmy.
Hello, Ray. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to see you. You're looking good.
It's good to be seen. And as far as looking good, I'll let someone else judge that.
I mean, for being around all this time, you look great.
Well, thank you. It's good to hear.
Yeah, you must have been doing something right. First thing,
I knew what it was.
You don't have to know as long as it works.
Okay.
The first thing I want to talk about is, I'm very fascinated by this, is your license plate collection. And I want to tell people, first of all, I want to tell people it's no joke. One of the most valuable antique license plates on record in 1921, a 1921 Alaska plate was bought for $40,000 and resold later for $60,000. Later on, in September 2020, a collection in the UK bid $500,000 for a plate that had only 2 characters, J4. Another plate dated back in 1902 read 010, fetched $170,000 in 2017. So you must be pretty good financially, huh?
Well, I guess maybe I should preface the rest of this by saying I don't have either of those plates. It's been a life force for me since I was a little kid. I've done it as long as I've done music, and music is the only thing that got in the way. I started collecting plates when I was 10 or when I was 7, and I started serious music when I was 8, 9, 10-ish. Mm-hmm. Once I got serious about music, I forgot about license plates, and I did nothing but music until the band got well enough established that we were traveling. And one of the side effects, one of the unpredictable side effects of traveling is all those license plates I was seeing. And that kind of rekindled, I was like, oh man, I wonder if I could get one from each state. Wouldn't that be fun, So eventually I got one from each state, and we continued traveling. And I thought, well, boy, it'd be nice. What if I could get one for each year from Ohio? And eventually I got that. And then I began to wonder, well, what if I could get one from each year from each state? And that became an ongoing 20-year process, which was never completed, although I got very close before I just decided, the hell with this. The target on my back had gotten too big, and the ones I needed, it's like, oh, Jim needs that. Oh, quick, call Jim, tell him to get his checkbook. So it got to the point where some of the fun had gone.
Right.
And in addition to that, my interests had skewed just a little bit. I was all of a sudden interested in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing ever since. And that would be for the last only 40 years or so. So for the last,
you still have the collection?
Oh, it is all around me, and I wish you could see it. I'm trying to think, what could I do real quickly to put my hands on it, get a kick out of. Hang on, I'll be right back.
Okay.
I don't have any idea. It's so unfair to pick up the first license plate you see. I mean, there's 1,000 license plates in a tiny room around me.
Wow.
Okay, this is video, so I've been gone too long.
Okay.
This is a license plate from the country of Haiti.
Wow.
From the year 1930.
Holy cow.
And I could make that trip 1,000 times and bring you out.
Now, how did you get that one? How did you get Haiti?
This particular one is not that interesting a story.
Right.
I had two 1931s, and another collector had a 30.
Okay.
So I was able to trade the 30 for my extra 31.
Wow.
Hang on. So this goes back.
That's very cool.
Oh, it just gets crazier. You'd be so sorry you asked. Okay. Here's the one I kept. There's the 31 Haiti, but that has a nice number on it.
Jeez.
So if I'd known we were going to plates, I'd have prepared. Oh, well.
That is
incredible. The rest of the world is what has my attention now in plates.
Of course. Everybody else as well.
And honestly, I'm waiting for my lunar plate to show up in the mail. So.
That's next. Boy, that would be quite an accomplishment if you can get like well, of course, the moon rover is not going to have a plate, right?
Well, there was a souvenir plate that was given out, to friends of the astronauts and stuff like that. And I had one of those for a few years, and I got to looking at it cross-eyed. I was like, it's a commemorative. It ain't nothing. So,
what's your most, valuable plate that you might have?
I don't know values so well because I'm not that much into buying and selling as I am into trading when I can.
Right.
But I can talk to you about a couple of favorites.
Right.
My current favorite plate is the plate that was on the second vehicle used by Pope Pius XII.
Wow. Holy cow.
STV, which is an Italian for state and city of Vatican, number 2, which was his second car. His first car was a Pierce Arrow. This was on a Mercedes that was presented to him by one of the people who worked for him at the Vatican upon his retirement. And he used it for about 15 years till he died.
Wow, that's incredible.
So that's a good plate.
Yeah.
And I just got, when the gang was in London, when it was touring England with the Who for the second time, we were staying in a better hotel than we were staying at the first time, where the window fell out of my room overnight one night and it's laying on the ground 3 stories below. There was a lovely Maserati parked blocking the door to the hotel. And I thought, well, that's cool. So I walk over, to see the Italian export plates, and Dale is with me. He wants to see the Maserati. So we're looking at the car, and on the back seat is a license plate. And it says on it, Abu Dhabi, with the number 4.
Yeah.
Now, this is 1971.
Right.
So not only was the gang young, but Abu Dhabi was only a country from 1971. Was the first year of the United Arab Emirates, if my history is right, which it usually isn't. I'd never heard of Abu Dhabi. So I said to Dale, excuse me, and I went up to the guy parking cars. I said, whose car is that? He goes, oh, that's the Sheikh. He can't be disturbed. I said, the Sheikh? Oh, yeah, the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi. I said, well, how do I talk to him? He said, oh, you don't. So I was all ballsy. Then I went inside and went to the front desk and said, I'd like to talk to the Sheik. His car is parked up front. Oh, yeah, of course. No, he can't be bothered, So I tried every trick I had and walked away defeated. And a bellhop had watched the exchange and he says, hey, listen, he says, I got an idea. He says, this just might work. He says, why don't we go over to the house phones? He says, I'll call his suite and hand you the phone. And that way we're not breaking any rules and I won't lose my job and this and that and the other thing. And I, quickly reached into my pocket, take care of the guy a little bit. We walk over to the house phone and I tell my story to 4 different people that answer. And everyone says, hold on. And eventually a guy gets on the phone in perfect English. He says, this is the Sheik. How may I help you? I said, well, I'm a rock and roll musician from Ohio and just happened to be visiting and staying at the hotel. And I saw your exquisite car and I noticed there's a license plate on the back and I collect automobile license plates. And the Sheik says, well, do you want that old thing? I'll be right down. You just wait right here in the lobby.
What a nice guy.
I put the phone down. I was stunned,
Wow.
and I come away from the phones and here's the rest of the band with Joe and Dale and our manager and everybody who's just, they don't know what's going on, but they see something's about to happen.
Very
the
cool.
elevator door opens, out comes the Sheik with an entourage and bodyguards and turbans and blondes and comes out to the car. Here's your plate.
Yeah. Actually, those guys are pretty cool. He
was extremely cool. And sadly, he passed away in Cleveland here just a few years ago. He'd been ill for a while. And Abu Dhabi has a strong connection to the Cleveland Clinic.
Really?
In fact, they built one over there.
Yeah. And
I just never found the right words to, hey, remember me, that crazy guy in the license plates 50 something years, so I let him die in peace. So.
Abu Dhabi always reminds me of a made up country that you'd find on a Bugs Bunny cartoon,
You got it.
Along with Acme and all,
Well, that plate's right over there.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty cool. That's a good story. Do you have Joe Walsh's old plate?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, in the day, Walsh was one of my great hidden assets. And we'd be somewhere on the road. It'd be 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Someone would be pounding on my hotel room door. Oh my God, I'd get up and throw some clothes on and look through the people, and all you could see is Walsh's eye because he's got his eye in the people, And I opened the door and Walsh would fall inside, leading with license plates that he's just found somewhere.
That's great. That's great, man.
I still have some of those.
Yeah.
Joe is a great ham radio enthusiast.
Really? I didn't know that.
One of the world-class guys. He really is.
Very cool.
And he understands a hobby and a passion. So we always, I in turn later found him some great vintage ham equipment. If you want to know what musicians do in their spare time, it's usually not this. So.
Roger McGuinn, from the Byrds.
Sure.
I talked to him. He lives in Orlando, and he listens to, I don't know if he still does or not. He was listening to the emergency radio channel where you can pick up all that. That's what he did all day.
Oh my goodness.
And he would pick up Disney World.
The emergency man.
You just never know. You just never know.
No, absolutely don't.
Yeah.
Lee Sklar, the wonderful session bass player, is a metal sculpturist.
Really?
And he is, I'm told, I've talked to him about it only once. He's as fanatical about it as I am about the plates.
Very cool.
It's like he lives to get back to the studio to work on the next metal sculpture.
I've always collected things too. I collected baseball cards, all kinds of stuff, man.
Did your mom pitch it?
What's that?
You haven't lived until your mom pitched your collection. So.
I pitched my collection. My first collection, my first valuable collection. I said, I'm too old for this. I throw them away. Stupid.
Yeah. It's a big club.
I know. But I started it up again later in life. Went to all the card shows. Well, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. You are a member of the Automobile License Plate Hall of Fame, the ALPCA Hall of Fame.
That is embarrassing.
It's actually pretty cool,
Well, I'm honored because I've done this for so long,
Yeah.
the club is a wonderful organization.
Right.
It marks the beginning of when I got going, you know, that was when I found out there was other collectors. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Until I was about 24, 25 years old. I had never met another collector.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, here's 1,000 collectors. And you know what? They're crazier than I am.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful thing. I'm still a member. And I did my time in service to that club. I was a director for years and a president for a number of years and stuff. I had a ball. It was good fun.
Very cool. Well, on to music. You started out with the Outsiders. And if people don't know the Outsiders, they made a big hit called Time Won't Let Me, which you weren't involved with, right? You left before that?
It wasn't that I left and came back. It was a strange story, but the first rock and roll band I ever played with, which by all intents and purposes, I mean, the first band I ever had that actually played to people that weren't being bar mitzvahed, you know, or married or something. I had an opportunity to leave the bar mitzvah band and join a rock and roll band. And I wasn't sure I wanted to do it. This was 1963. And the band was called Tom King and the Starfires. And they were a local bar band that played rock and roll. And the sax player who I'd played with in my little wedding band left us to play in this rock and roll band. And I was horrified. You know, I was like, how can you do this? It's rock and, you know, it was pre-Beatles. And I'm still thinking Fabian, you know, I'm thinking rock and roll has had a better time than it's having right now.
Exactly.
And he was a good musician, the sax player. He knew the difference, and yet he was doing this.
Yeah.
And I said, well, good luck, man. You know, let him go, waved goodbye, and felt real bad about it. About 3 months later, he calls me, you know, how's the band? How's everything going? Listen, our drummer just left. We need a drummer. I said, you know how I feel. I'm not committed to rock and roll music. I've been listening to a lot of jazz. He said, Jimmy, it's a good band. You have to join the union, and it pays $17 a night, which in those days was income.
Yeah, exactly.
And I heard him say that, and I said, well, what do I have to do? Well, come to this rehearsal. So I dragged my drums up 3 flights of stairs in a tenement somewhere to meet Tom King of the Starfires. And he looks at me. He says, don't unpack your drums. Can you be at the Dove Lounge Friday night at 9 o'clock, which was a dive bar in Cleveland in a not savory neighborhood? And I said, yes. So I went into that band without having 1 second of rehearsal and without them ever having heard me play, you know? And long story, a little bit longer, that band became the Outsiders. Right. And I had left to go to college. Yeah. And I had a college band, and they were doing their thing, and they got a chance to make a record called Time Won't Let Me.
Yeah, good song.
Changed their name to the Outsiders, and the record went all the way to the top 5. Yep. It was a great record. Yeah. And out of the blue comes a call from Tom King saying, drummer's been drafted. We need a drummer, and we need you right this minute. Yeah. You know, so I had to untangle the band I was in, and I had to untangle my college career, and I had to untangle my parents, you know, who to them I was quitting to join the circus. Yeah, exactly. And I went up back to Cleveland. I'd been at Ohio State and Columbus. Right. Back to Cleveland. We made the album, but Time Won't Let Me was already finished and up the charts, which is why I'm not on it. I'm on most of the rest of the album. Yeah, very cool. And then we went and we did a tour. Yeah. And among other things, we did the Hullabaloo television show. Hullabaloo, which was great fun. And that exists all these years later. Yeah. You can find it if you want to see it. You know.
Did you do the Dick Clark tour, or were you on a bus with all the other bands and stuff? I left the week the Dick Clark tour began. Okay. And the reason I left is because after one tour with the band, I made a calculation that this was not the music I wanted to be playing. This was not it was still more important to me to start my own group. Sure. And by then, I'd heard the Beatles. The Beatles came. And that was the change. That was the difference. The first week I played with Tom King and the Starfires. Right. Kennedy was assassinated. Yeah.
I heard the Beatles.
Yep.
I joined Tom King and the Starfires. So it was a pretty eventful week in my life.
Right.
And of course, it changed my opinion of rock and roll
Mhm.
forever, you know, forever and for better, as they say. So that's how that all went down. And it made a complete change in my goals.
Mhm.
The primary different factor being, I never wanted to be anything but a musician. I really, you know, all I ever wanted to do was be a drummer. I wanted to be a musician.
Right.
Then I heard the Beatles and the goal changed slightly.
Yep.
Because from then on, I wanted to be in a band.
Right.
And that was more important than being a musician.
Yep.
Being in a band, having the camaraderie, the opportunity to play with other people and make music and communicate between each other and stuff.
Yep.
Then I wanted to play in a band.
Yep. Very cool. So did you look the part back then? Did you have the mop top and the Beatle boots and you know?
The Beatle boots were given to me by the manager when I started out with the Outsiders. And the manager's wife took one look at me and said, "We need to cut your hair." And in their living room in another suburb of Cleveland, I sat in a chair while this and willingly allowed this woman to cut all the hair off the front of my head. I can't tell you why, but if you ever see that Hullabaloo show, you'll see why.
I'm going to look it up.
I've been described as, "You look like an axe murderer, Jim."
That's funny.
So no, I did not look the part at first. But the hair started growing at that moment.
Right. Well, the James gang, that was all you. And I like your story. When Glenn Schwartz left, Joe, I guess he was the one that recommended Joe. Joe came to the door, looked through the peephole, and would not go away.
Yeah, it's a good story. It's a true story. Although Joe and I have spirited but friendly discussions about whether that moment took place like that and how it could have. And Joe says, I just can't put it in context because we didn't know each other well. I don't know how I would have known where you lived. I said, Joe, I can't explain any of that. I just remember, looking through the hole and seeing your face. And I opened the door and it's like, "Hey man, I heard you need a guitar."
Yeah, that sounds just like him.
This is pre-internet. This is how does news travel that quickly? I mean, Glenn gave us his notice on a Saturday night and was out of town within the hour. He was gone.
Wow.
He had issues and he needed to leave. And it was Monday and I was back at Kent when I was enrolled at Kent State. Tom Chris was enrolled at Kent State. And Joe was there as well, playing in a competing band called the Measles.
Right, the Measles.
What a great name for it. Come catch the Measles. What great business cards and advertisements. So, I hear Joe's voice, and it's one of those dumb moments. This is a guy that could replace Glenn. And there weren't many. Glenn sadly passed a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Glenn was so many years ahead of his time.
Right.
That it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we were so fortunate to have had Glenn for the time we had him.
Right.
And when his lifestyle and the world caught up with him and everything, I thought, well, this is the end of the band because there's no one like him.
Yeah.
The only person that was like him was Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
And we just, we didn't know another American. I guess maybe in retrospect, there was a fellow named Jimmy McCarty out of Detroit who played with the Detroit
Cactus.
Later with Cactus,
yeah.
But originally he was Mitch Ryder's guitar player.
Right.
And he played on some of Mitch's hits. You could hear a little of that type of guitar. And there weren't many other guys in the US because we are talking December 66. That's a long time ago. And that was early in the curve,
Yeah.
So, there was a band called the Blues Project, which some of your listeners will remember, a great New York band. But boy, you could count the guitar players on one hand who were trying to play that way. And here's Joe. And the light goes on immediately. Like, this guy can do it. Joe can play like this, So we talked. Again, someday you'll get Joe's version of this, but I obviously invite him in and we talk. And he says, "What are you thinking?" And I said, "Well, obviously that we've lost Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
We need a guitar player." I
Yeah.
said, "And coincidentally, and you must know it or you wouldn't be here, you're the guy." And he said, "Well, how would you approach it?" I said, "Well, I think the thing to do is get us in a room with our instruments and let's play for a couple of hours and see what comes of it,
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly what we did. My parents had a basement.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was still living at home then when I wasn't in college. Which is, I once heard, was it Colin Blunstone or Rod Argent, one of the guys from the original Zombies, saying
Mm-hmm.
when their second hit made #1, all 5 of them were still living with their parents.
That's great.
And I've often thought about that. Yeah, we weren't that much different. We came home from school and Joe's family was in New Jersey, so he was stuck. He couldn't go home that easily.
That reminds me of the Pink Floyd song, "You Bought a Guitar to Punish Your Ma."
Yeah.
The lyrics.
Yeah. And there it is. What a priceless, timeless line that is from our era. It's just incredible. And my parents were very encouraging. They were very tolerant of it. And the music I made in the basement was my business, and they were happy they just knew we weren't on the streets.
Yeah, exactly.
So we played for a couple of hours and managed to pull together a lot of songs, more songs than any other guitar player on earth could possibly have absorbed in that period of time.
Now, was any of the James Gang classics born on that day?
Not on that day, shortly afterwards, but not on that day.
Right.
And there was nothing original on that day. We were just playing cover tunes. Yeah. But he must have soaked up 30 cover tunes in that, one day. And we all kind of looked at each other and said, "What do you think?" And everybody kind of went, "That was really fun," because I don't think Joe had been successful in finding that type of musician before either. Joe, the Measles were a great band, but they were great. They were a very good pop-ish band. Yeah. And of course, we were looking at the Yardbirds. We were looking at things like that. That's what we wanted to do. And heck, Joe's a guitarist. Any guitarist who was learning to play at the time was going to be influenced by those early guys.
Right.
And Beck specifically, someone who could appreciate the artistry of a George Harrison, things that weren't necessarily in the other top 40 records.
Right. What was so great about the James Gang, though? You guys had your own sound. And of course, Joe Walsh's vocals nobody can copy Joe Walsh's vocals,
That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That's another discussion I've had with Joe over the years in stages. It took Joe a long time, not just out of the gang, but years of growth in the industry, for him to recognize the fact that he was never willing to admit to himself, which was, yes, there was some talent there.
Yes.
He could never understand it at the time. He was like, "God, I don't know that I'm good enough to do this. I don't know if what I'm doing is right. I don't know if it's a good direction. I have," and of course, the other guys in the band were like, "Joe, it is. You're good. Don't, come up, let's hear another one,
Yeah.
But to him, he was very modest in his thinking about it, and he didn't think he was there yet. And the truth of the matter was, he was there that day at the Peephole. I mean, Joe's talent was a lot of it God-given.
It's crazy. I've interviewed, lots and lots of musicians. They all kind of feel they're not good enough, or they need to practice more. Or the good ones. They like Jimi Hendrix never thought his voice was any good,
right?
Which was perfect for his music, But
and Joe spent the first year insisting we find a lead singer. He says, "It'll never be me, man."
It would have never been the same band. Never in a million years. Look at Joe now. I mean, when I hear Rocky Mountain Way, that's Joe.
It's Joe. Period. Exactly right.
I'm sure he's tired of playing that tune.
Well, maybe so, but I'll tell you what, having something that's unique to yourself is better than having chops.
Exactly. Well, the cool thing, you guys were, you guys were signed, let's see, by what was his name?
His name is, it's easier.
Mark.
It's easier.
Mark Barger? Mark Barger, right?
Oh, originally it's for management.
Yeah.
Yes, and named Mark Barger.
That was in 68. He also handled the Lemon Pipers, which I interviewed Ivan Brown of the Lemon Pipers. I had him on the show.
That you had. I listened to some of that. Yes.
He's a cool guy, him and his wife.
And a funny story, because the reason we chose Mark Barger to manage us,
right,
is because he had an office 1 block away from my parents' house.
That's funny.
And I used to walk by and go wonder, what are those guys doing? I once saw some long hairs, you know? And then by then I knew Ivan because we played locally in Cincinnati, and they played locally in Cincinnati.
Right.
Ivan and their guitarist, who was formidable. Okay, his name is escaping me right now. He was a fine guitar player.
Yeah, very good group.
We wandered in one day and says, "You guys manage bands?" And they were like, "Yeah." You know, and I was like, "We have a band." You know, it's you talk about how things happen, how bizarre things happen. That's one.
You guys kind of rushed into it, but you were actually opening up for Cream at the Grand Ballroom in Detroit. That was like early in you guys' career, right?
We had, it was early in our career, and we had nothing if not balls. In the Glen days, we piled the entire band, all of our equipment, our quote unquote roadie, who was a friend who helped move equipment, into 2 station wagons, drove to New York City overnight, walked in the front door of The Scene, which was a famous nightclub in Manhattan at the time, asked for the owner, and out came Steve Paul, the owner of The Scene. And we said, "Steve, we're from Cleveland. We just drove all the way. We want to play here." And he went, wait a minute. You're booked for 3 months in advance. He said, "What are you guys called?" I said, "We're called the James Gang." He says, "Well, that's not possible. You just played here last week." A Southern band called the James Gang had played there a week earlier. They're actually a decent band. They made records and stuff. The reason we survived is it was the law had something to do with first on the charts wins. And we were allowed to retain the name because we had established that success.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, with 2 of the guys at the end of 5 days, he let us play 5 nights at the Scene for nothing, of course. He says, "I'll buy you 2 hotel rooms for the group. That's your pay. You can play for the next 5 nights." And we shared a bill with Tiny Tim and Monty Rock and just this bizarre group of people. But at the end, when we thanked him, he said, "Well, do you guys have to leave? And do you have a manager?" And I said, "Well, these 2 guys over here, I didn't want to tell you, but they're underage. They're starting 11th grade next week."
Oh my God.
You know? That's how young we were. And that was crazy. Tom Christ and Phil Gilombardo. Yeah. And they were literally 16 years old. They shouldn't have even been in the bar. You know, Steve could have got his license taken away.
That's funny. Were you a fan of Ginger Baker at that time, or was that too early?
No. Until Ginger Baker, pretty much all my idols were jazz guys.
Okay.
With Art Blakey on top. Art Blakey was always my favorite jazz.
Buddy Rich.
Every time I say it, Buddy, but Elvin Jones, a whole litany. And every time I run through it, Joe says, "Well, what about Keith Moon?" And of course he's right, you know, and he couldn't be righter. Yeah. But about that time when the first Cream album came out, there's your bridge right there.
Yeah.
There's a guy who not only swallowed jazz whole and was a living, timely participant of that scene, but he made the transition. He became a massive powerhouse of a rock drummer.
Yeah.
And I idolized Ginger Baker. I thought he was one of the greats. And I had met him because we had played a couple of those early Cream gigs. And the Grandy was another one of those gutsy things. Yeah. Well, we'd like to play in Michigan. Well, what about this Grandy Ballroom? You know, I called, "Hey, who books the place?" And there's a guy named Jeep Holland who was like a middleman booker. Jeep wound up in Boston, an interesting figure with all the Detroit guys. If you talk to any of the Detroit guys about Jeep, because he booked a lot of the local clubs. Jeep says, "I think I could get you into the Grandy." We were like, wow, we knew who played there. I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't last a long time. The Grandy was only active for a couple of years.
Yeah, very
But,
famous.
the cream was, everybody was there.
Yep.
He says, well, we got the Youngbloods coming next weekend. You want to open for them? It's like, oh my God, yeah. So we, again, get in the station. I think we had a van by then, drive up to Detroit and open for the Youngbloods to a full packed Grandy ballroom. And we're kids. We don't have an original song in our tool bag.
That is incredible. Huh. So what'd you do? Play all covers?
Yeah. Yeah. And that came to a head on one of the Cream shows.
Right.
Where we had been a quartet at that point. There was a brief moment when we were just four. We were five for the longest time. And four through attrition. And the second guitarist came up with a very, very bad case of some phobia and decided he couldn't make the drive and didn't tell anyone. So that when we got to the gig, it was me, Joe, and Tom Chris, the original bass player, with nobody else. And we decided, well, we can't play. And Jeep, same guy, takes us in a corner and goes, look, first of all, you're playing because you're contractually obligated and I need you. Second of all, you're playing because this is a great opportunity for you guys. So shut up and figure out how you're going to do it as a trio, And we got 7 encores on a Cream show.
7. Wow.
And we if we'd had any original tunes, we'd have run out of them.
Wow.
We ran out of every song that we actually had to we had to close with like a Hendrix song opening for Cream. It was so embarrassing, but we were out of material. It was either that or start repeating songs.
Was Cream pissed because you guys are so good? Usually that happens.
Yeah, if they were so standoffish in those days that if that were the case, we never found out. That we never later established relationships with those guys. Right. In fact, got to jam with Clapton, had some really wonderful experiences in the early days. But in the very early days, those guys weren't even speaking to each other.
Yeah.
It was not a good situation. And us wanting to talk shop didn't help a bit.
Yeah.
So they kind of stayed away from us.
I was friends with Joe Lala. I think we talked earlier about that, but when they opened up, Blues Image would open up. Nobody wanted to play with them anymore because of Mike Panera. Sure. He was such a great guitar player,
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Peter Towson. He liked you guys, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And we liked him.
Didn't he invite you to tour with him? With the Who?
Oh, man. I'll tell you what. He heard us. Our managers by then were the Belkin brothers.
Right.
Belkin, who became very successful concert promoters, among the most successful, I would say, in the U.S. An advantage to that is when they're out promoting concerts, they sometimes book artists who may need an opening slot. They need someone to fill. And sure enough, there was a Who show in Pittsburgh, I believe, at the Syrian Mosque, which I think is gone now. And Mike Belkin calls me one day and says, how'd you like to open for the Who? Oh my God, we would do anything. He says, well, you're in, it's my show. It's my show. You're the opening act.
Wow.
And unbeknownst to us, Pete got there early.
Yeah.
Pete watched us from some point. And afterwards, he came into our dressing room. He said, I love you guys. I want you to do our British tour that's coming up in a couple of months. And we were like flabbergasted. We just, oh my, these things don't happen. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So we did a couple of more US states with the Who on the way, and then straight to Europe it wasn't even Europe, it was England for 27 shows in like
27 shows. Wow.
Yeah. And it was so early in the rock and roll curve.
Yeah.
No limos, no tour bus.
Huh.
Each of us went in his other guy's car. So I went with Keith in his roles. Joe went with Pete in his Mercedes. John took Dale and he had a Citroen. And Roger, we would throw fingers every once in a while to see who would ride with Roger in his Jaguar, so he didn't feel slighted, you know. But Roger's such a poor driver that none of us wanted to go with him. In fact, he wrecked that car on that tour.
Did he really?
Yeah.
But you know what? You're very lucky riding with Keith Moon that you didn't end up in a swimming pool.
Well, easily. And of course, Roger was the only driver. The rest of the guys in the band had their roadies double as their drivers.
Good.
So Chalky, who was Keith's tech for a time, did the driving. Keith was more or less unconscious most of that time because we were driving from venue to venue within England. Yeah. And England isn't a big country, but it can take a few hours to get from one end to the other, which meant we were leaving early in the day, which meant that Keith hadn't yet been to bed. So, you know, as far as a companion goes at that moment, Keith was toast. You know, the first thing we would do every morning was look for a drugstore where where Chalky could walk in and get a bottle of something called Lucosade, which is like a lemonade, this vile lemonade mix that was supposedly going to help you with your hangover. And, you know, a few hours after that, Keith would come to. And then we would, so Jim, how were things last night? You know, but, you know, he'd like wake up at 2 PM and realize he was sitting next to me. And it's, you know,
that's crazy. Wow.
Jim, were the drums okay then? Did they sound all right? You know?
Yeah. I remember he passed out during a show.
Yeah, that's a famous one. Yeah, they had to pull the drummer out of the audience.
That's crazy.
And some kid walked up on stage and, according to Pete, played very well.
you guys had some great hits, you know. Did you know those songs were going to be hits? Did you have a feeling that they were that good when you were putting them together, you know?
I want to tell you how so far away we were from the business industry of rock and roll. So far away that if you stop and think about it, you'll realize that Funk 49 isn't even on the live album. we didn't do it that well. So we say, okay, so we just won't use it next.
That's funny.
You know, we didn't think about fixing it. We didn't think about anything. Then when the live album was recorded, the next day we hear from Mike Belkin very loudly.
Yeah.
Where's Walk Away?
Right.
What do you mean? Well, it's not anyhow, Jimmy, it's out. It's a single. It's a hit. You know, I said, we didn't do it well, Mike. He says, well, you better fix it. So Joe and I sat down and we said, okay, what's it going to take?
Right.
And we broke the Carnegie Hall recordings down to the drums and audience and rebuilt Walk Away. It's the only notes on the live album that aren't truly live from the event. Right. But we were so naive that between the three of us, not one of us had the brains to say, you know, maybe we should try and get Walk Away onto this album. So we didn't know from hits. We never, I don't think we ever aspired to a hit other than to attempt to respond to ABCs and treaties, which was always, come on, you guys, we need hits. We need a hit. You know, you need to go back in and write a hit.
That's right.
I don't think we knew what a hit was any more than all the other guys who tell you they did, but they don't.
Yeah.
Because most people don't.
My favorite song was The Bomber, Closet Queen, Bolero, Cast Your Fate to the Wind. That segue there was incredible. I mean, you know, it stands the test of time. It really does.
There was a song, it was written by Hoyt Axton, great writer. His mother wrote Heartbreak Hotel, talking about good writers. He wrote a song called The Pusher.
Yeah.
And it was an early, Steppenwolf recorded it, did very well with it. And it's how we knew the song. And we liked it. And again, in the days when cover tunes were what we had, we used to cover The Pusher. But on stage, it grew. And it went from this 3-minute record to a 15-minute jam. And on the way, don't ask me how. Once again, if you could put me and Joe in the same room, you'll get two really plausible stories.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure which it is, but somehow we were playing Bolero on the stage one night. Somehow we went in, either I went into it or Joe went into it. Either one of us knew enough that we could have, and we liked it. We left it. So then when we were playing the Pusher eventually went from this long jam into the Bolero.
That's interesting.
And then came Cast Your Fate to the Wind. And once again, both Joe and I knew the tune. It could have come from either one of us. I'm guessing in that case, though, because there's melody involved, that it came from Joe. And he just went into it one night. And after we came off the stage, he went, well, that's going to stay. Yeah. So we had the elements of the Bomber together, except for Closet Queen, the Bomber. Right. That we didn't have. So when it came to record, it was like, God, we don't want to cover the Pusher, which is a cover song of somebody else's cover song.
Yeah.
What if we tried to remove the Pusher from what we do on stage? And that's how the Bomber came to be. And that was a conscious effort in the studio at the time. You know, no rehearsals and no experimentation with live. We just figured, okay, maybe this will work. And we played with it till we had that first section in something that was our own.
Your Bolero, was that before Jeff Beck's Bolero? I think it was, wasn't it? Beck's Bolero?
I have to be honest. I don't recall 100%.
I don't know when he did
very
that.
Close in time. Yeah. I think Beck's Bolero was earlier.
Was it? You think he did it was like right after the Yardbirds or something? Or he could have been with the Yardbirds. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I would love to see you guys play the Pusher, though. That's one of my favorite all-time songs.
It's truthfully so removed from my existence anymore that I can't remember playing the Pusher on stage. I can remember the jam and the rest of it that went on, but we played very eclectic material. We were a true democracy. First of all, the rule in the band was minority rules. So if two said yes and one said no, the answer was 100% no. Yeah, that's the way the band worked.
Right.
And when, that extended to songs we should do, the order of the set list, anything you can think of that required a band decision, A, we allowed it to be a band decision, and B, it was minority rules, always. Right. So it was a good democracy, and it gave us that incredible latitude to listen to each other.
Yeah.
And that's what a band is about.
Great band, man. How'd you feel when Joe decided to leave?
First word comes to mind is crushed.
Yeah.
Absolutely crushed. I wasn't expecting it. I could see Joe growing at a rate that was unsustainable for us to keep up. That was obvious. I made a tactical mistake. Joe was hearing these great arrangements in his head, for new material. And a lot of these things seem to require keyboards. And my attitude was, well, Joe's a great keyboard player in his own right. He's played some famous stuff on the keyboard. I didn't see the need to add a keyboardist because, of course, in the studio, it could have been rectified because you could play one part and then you can play the other part. But when you're live on a stage, you miss that interaction. Joe would have to put down one instrument for the other. And I didn't take that wish of Joe's seriously enough. And instead, I opted for the old theory of it's a trio. So everybody gets a window and someone else gets to drive, And I like that. I like the room in the car. So I never got more serious about adding a keyboard there. And I should have taken that dead seriously.
Yeah.
And should have said, okay, next chapter, man, let's do it.
Right. Do you think you would have stayed if you added a keyboard player?
Probably for one more album.
Yeah.
And then it would have been the next stage. I mean, he was growing so fast.
Yeah.
And he was changing so quickly and just broadening, and he broadened beyond what three pieces were capable of doing.
Yeah.
And believe me, he would have broadened beyond 4 and beyond 5. And, Joe really, the guys who know Joe today and see beyond the fact that he's trapped in an eagle body and he has to do what the Eagles do, of course.
Right.
They don't know his growth, but believe me, it continues.
I really think Joe was very proud of the James Gang because you guys did a couple of reunions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
they
if it
were
wasn't for the
great.
Eagle thing, like you said, maybe he would have circled back to maybe a new album or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were heading in that direction.
Yeah.
And the reunion tour in '06
Right.
was amazingly satisfying for all of us.
Yeah.
We did 17 cities. We added a keyboardist, a
Mhm.
brilliant keyboardist out of LA who Joe
Right.
knew somewhat. And at Joe's request, we added background singers, which
Mhm.
Dale was dead set against at first. I don't like the idea. I don't like the look. I said, you know what, buddy? We don't have a lot of choice in this. This is the singer who's making this edict, you know? He's the one who wants the support. So we talked about it. And finally, Joe said, look, I'll ask you one favor.
Mhm.
Let's listen to them for 1 hour. And if you don't like them, I swear to God, I'll never mention it again.
Huh.
So he put 3 ladies together.
Right.
And we were in LA getting ready to prepare for the tour. Everything was in place. And the girls
Right.
show up and they're nice ladies, easy to talk to, very attractive women, which doesn't hurt on a stage. And totally cool babes, you know. 15 minutes in, I looked at Dale and Dale's going, he was right again, you know. And of course, it's crucial that Joe be in a comfort zone when it comes to singing, because his voice is 50 years older.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's had to work hard to make his voice is better today than it was.
It is. You're right about that.
And that's by design. That's not by accident, because he takes care of it. He trains it. He does all the things that are the right things to give you a chance to sing well.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, so it was absolutely the right thing to do.
You know, I think the girls are the right choice, man. I mean, you guys could lay out the stage right now, kind of like Pink Floyd. You know, have the girls, the keyboard player. You know, it'd be pretty cool. A big production now. You know,
we talk about it regularly.
Yeah,
there's an ongoing issue, and the issue is that the Eagles are a full-time life's commitment, and it's not that they're playing every day, but they're doing something every day.
Yeah,
it requires some kind of a commitment.
Yeah,
greater than what it would. You know, we're not going to bust Joe out of the Eagles for 3 nights.
Right.
You know, it's got to be enough time so that we can prepare ourselves, rehearse, get into a real stage setting, you know, plan your crew, plan your show. And that takes time. And then you have to tour. So you're talking about an absolute minimum of 3-4 months.
Right.
And it's very difficult for Joe to say to the Eagles, I'll be back in 3-4 months. It doesn't work that way, you know? And Joe's commitment to the Eagles is, as it should be, unending.
Yeah,
it's the way it is.
I love the James Gang. I like the James Gang way better than the Eagles, I got to admit.
Well, it's extremely flattering. You know, if it were strictly a financial decision, I would still understand it perfectly in Joe's case.
Yeah,
you know, it's insane. You know, the Eagles make insane money. And deserve it. They draw insane crowds.
Yeah, but the original guys, they're not all there.
No, they're not anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. And I hate to fall back on that cliche, but it's true. And as long as there's butts and seats, the powers that be, the industry accepts the Eagles as the Eagles.
But how rare would it be? Because you guys have the original members. You know what I mean?
We've thought about it. We may be the longest running band. ZZ Top was like at about 48 years. So they lost the bass player.
Yeah.
We're still here.
Yeah.
And we'd be at about 50, 52, 53. And we, you know, all 3 of us are cognizant.
Yeah, exactly.
We discussed it amongst
you
ourselves.
Look great. You're healthy.
Everyone is healthy. And that's not going to be true forever. It's a different world, man. Yeah. And I don't know what's going to be. I would love the opportunity. And we've talked about it endlessly. It's just waiting for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I hope it comes.
It would be awesome. You know, I've talked to Mark Farner a bunch of times, and he's game. He says, I'm ready if they want to do the reunion, you know, but it's Brewer, I think. He won't do it.
Right.
But
I wouldn't be surprised.
Grand Funk Railroad, the original band with the James Gang original band. Imagine that, huh?
We played shows together.
Yeah, I believe it.
And they were always fun because they were such a good group of guys.
Yeah.
They were really, they were
Yeah.
fun to be around. They weren't,
I know.
sometimes you play with a band and they're somehow fail to meet your expectations
Yeah.
personally. Like I was saying, the Cream was having internal
Yeah.
problems. They were no fun to be with.
Right.
These guys were easy.
Yeah.
They're just easy. It was just like, hey, how you doing? What's going on?
Yeah.
And that's great. I mean, that's what you hope for at a show, because it puts everyone at ease and gives you a chance to do what you're there for.
Exactly.
And then it's fun.
Well, all the Tommy Bolin fans out there would not forgive me if I don't mention Tommy Bolin.
And rightfully.
And, I've interviewed Johnny, his brother, and all the, Tommy Bolin fans and connections there. What was it like when Tommy joined the band?
It was a revelation.
Mm.
Between Joe and Tommy,
right,
was a guitarist named Dominic Troiano.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant in his own right. He's in the
Right.
Canadian Hall of Fame. He's just a wonderful guitarist. In fact,
Yeah.
we heard him in a jam with Clapton for the first time. That's how
Wow.
we knew Donnie.
Hmm.
Joe was leaving. We talked about a bunch of guitar players, and Donnie's name came up, and there he was. And he joined the band and stayed with us for 2 albums. And then he went on to play with the Guess
Yep.
Who. And right at that moment, because the network is so insane in the music business, the phone rings. It's Walsh. Hey, man, I got a guitar player for you, man. It's just like he did for himself, His name's Tommy Bolin. You ought to give him a call. I said, you got his number? Got your pencil? Call. Gives me a number.
Wow.
Tommy answers. I said, Tommy, you come highly recommended from a guy named Joe Walsh. He goes, no kidding. I said, yeah. I said, we need a guitar player. He said, the answer is always the same in that sense. What do you want to do? Well, let's get together. So we brought him out on the road for a couple of nights and had a spectacular time. And after Donnie, who was sort of the anti-Joe, Donnie had a straightness about him and a sense of purpose and everything. Joe had that sense of fun, that sense of craziness, and Tommy had that. And it was good to have it back.
Yeah.
It was fun because it was, man, let's get out and jam. Let's find some people. Let's have a good time. We play St. Louis and someone would tell them, well, Albert King's playing his neighborhood bar tonight. It was like, okay, that's where we're going after this gig. And we would do stuff like that. And Tommy would have the guts to walk into that bar, walk up to the stage and say, Albert, I'd like to jam with you.
That's cool.
And those were the things. That's the direction the band went. It became a much free form, much freer thing. Yeah. And Tommy's playing.
Yep. He was incredible.
Words fail me. I've been blessed to have played with some guitar players.
Oh, yeah.
I never played with a bad one. We played with some of the spectacular guitar players of the era. And people have, in writing, in articles, called us the American Yardbirds.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I was just going to say you guys are like Yardbirds.
Man. Some of the great guitar players have walked these halls, man. Everything I would say about Joe, I would have to turn around and say about Tommy.
Yeah.
And Tommy, in his way, was that quality of a musician.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And that's high praise.
He's great.
That's high praise.
I know Billy Cobham, and of course he played on the Spectrum album.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I've joked with Billy, we share a guitar player there for a while. Because there was a time when it overlapped. And the first time he looked at me, he totally didn't understand. And I said, Tommy, and he went, oh, God.
Yeah. I was fortunate to see Tommy with you guys.
Oh, cool.
On the Alice Cooper tour. I think it was the Welcome to My Nightmare. It was Alice Cooper, James Gang, and Roy Buchanan, who was a big favorite of mine.
Imagine today the chances of that even happening.
Yeah, exactly.
It was funny. We were at a time when our direction was a little uncertain. I think Tommy was gone. Was Tommy on that tour, or was Richard?
Yeah, no, he was there. He was there.
Was he?
I believe he was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because for some of that tour, at least, I know Richard Shack was with us, who was the following guitar player.
Right.
It was a little different for us because the offer came through. It's about 60 shows.
Yeah.
And it's like, God, that's what we're going to do for 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And we decided it would be a good thing to do, having known Alice, and again, knowing the quality of the players and the quality of the people. And those are the things we always judge. You know, it's great if you're a great musician, but if you're a jerk, who wants to hang out? You know, and we never lost the idea of this is fun. Remember, if it's not fun, something's wrong.
Exactly.
You know? And Alice was easy to love. He had Dick Wagner, he had all these great, he had for Cash and Whitey, and just brilliant players, every one of whom was accessible and fun, because we were on an airplane with them every day. You know, we had a chartered plane for those 60 days. Yeah. So it was a tight entourage, and it was a big entourage. It was close to 60 people.
Wow.
So, you know, and there was a great poker game every day on the plane. I mean, it was fun. It was what it was supposed to be.
I don't know how you guys did it though. The touring. I mean, I can't imagine doing it today at my age, you know?
Well, with the pandemic, with a lot of negative things, it would be tougher. But I've always looked kind of sideways at people who complained about touring. Yes, you're away from home. That's no fun. Nobody, you know, if you have a home life at all, whether it's with a wife and children, a family, whether it's with a friend, whatever it is, it's hopefully a good life at home. When it isn't a good life at home, it's really easy to travel. Then, you know, the bell rings and you're gone and you don't think about it till you come home.
Yeah.
But when life on the road is good, it's great.
Yeah.
Who else gets that privilege, that 90, you know, I'll live with the other 22 hours. Just give me that 90 or 100 minutes on the stage and I'll do anything for you. I'll ride a bus. I'll stay in a bad hotel. I'll eat crappy food. I'll do all that stuff, you know. But today, if you were to tour, okay, all of a sudden the bus isn't so bad. All of a sudden the food is great. The hotels are nice. And I think to myself, if you're really going to complain about that, you're not analyzing it clearly enough. Exactly. It can be a wonderful experience, and all in service of the time on stage, which I guarantee you, Ray, you won't find it anywhere else. There's no feeling like that in the world.
Do you have a funny road story, something crazy that happened on the road? That
No, nothing. Nothing. You know, I have so many good stories that I would have needed to prepare myself on this. As I'm sitting here, I'm wondering if the night Keith Moon jumped into Lake Erie might be up there somewhere.
Lake Erie, huh?
The Who had played Cleveland, and we by then good friends, having done the tours with them and close together. So we went down to hang out, and we were on our way to dinner after the show, and Keith was eyeing some relative of Dale's younger sister kind of thing, you know. She's about 14 years old, and we just got somebody better tell that to Keith before this got out of hand. So we elected Pete to tell Keith, and Pete says, Keith, she's 14 years old. And Keith looks at Pete in front of this restaurant on a pier in front of Lake Erie and says, you don't trust me. And he jumped into the lake. Okay, he jumped into the lake at a break wall so that the drop was about 15 feet. Okay, he didn't just wade into the lake. He jumped into Lake Erie. None of us knew at that moment that Keith could not swim.
Oh my gosh!
Only Pete. And Pete just looked at us and went, "Oh man!" and threw his shoes off and jumped in after him. And if he hadn't, Keith would have drowned.
Yeah,
you know. And he dragged Keith back out of the lake. This was an everyday thing with Keith. That's all I can say.
He needed a babysitter.
The guys that were hired to do his work, roadies, his drivers, whatever, that wasn't their main job. Their main job was to watch Pete alive.
Yeah,
you know, that's it. But
he lived life to the fullest, didn't he?
To the fullest. To the fullest. Nothing but admiration.
So when Tommy left the band, that had to really hurt. Huh?
Another tough one. You know, it's like, now what? And I stand behind the records we made with Tommy.
Yeah,
I love them. They were fun making them. Playing with Tommy was just plain fun. Tommy was one of these guys who was never without the instrument in his hand.
Yeah.
You know, you'd see him. I know this sounds stupid. You'd see him come out of the bathroom. He had his guitar, you know, he never didn't have his guitar.
That's funny.
And it was pure love. There was no goal in mind, you know, other than to improve.
Yeah.
He just, that was Tommy. He had that much love for the instrument.
Yeah. Did you notice the drug use going on, or, I mean, was it
the hard drug use? I would like to believe, and I think I'm right, did not exist with the gang. We couldn't help but notice that he smoked a lot more pot than anybody else we'd ever met.
Yeah.
You know, that's no sin.
Which is safe. It's a safe drug.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, in those days, admittedly, it was still against the law, whatever. But bottom line is, you could live.
Yeah.
As you say, you could live.
Right. You're not going to OD, you know.
Tommy smoked a lot of pot, and Tommy was very susceptible to whatever came in from the wild. You know, there's someone in the dressing room, hey, you want a little of this, or you want a taste of that? Tommy was first in line always.
Right.
We never saw heroin or any other of the hard drugs when he was around.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that that was something he picked up afterwards. We, you know, it's not that we were strict. Dale had some hard issues. It kept him away from too much alcohol and pretty much drugs, you know, so that was one issue. I was somewhat moderate in my use. I was a little curious, but only a little curious. And I don't think we drew that kind of people. You know, I don't think the heroin addicts were waiting for the gang to come to town. You know, the guys who wanted to throw joints at us were waiting. Yeah. But the hard stuff, Tommy was cooler in those days. You know, apparently his needs were different. He hadn't been exposed to that sort of thing. And he wanted to smoke pot, all right. And nobody in our band blamed him. You know, it was all fine with us.
You know, the situation has gotten worse than it ever did, you know, with the fentanyl and all that.
Yeah. Well, and add the intention factor to it. This fentanyl is places you just don't know it's about to kill you in, you know.
Oh, definitely.
So that makes it much tougher.
Yeah.
It's, you know, no, I'll never do any of that stuff while you don't realize you're doing it right now.
Yeah. You don't know what's in what you're smoking nowadays, you know. So
it's tough. And I don't envy people. To make a quick detour.
Yep.
Taylor Hawkins, my God.
I know.
I knew Taylor pretty well.
Yeah.
For just short of 20 years.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. And in those 20 years, boy, put me on a witness stand and ask me, was Taylor clean? And I'll tell you, he was clean.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened. I'd like to think in my romanticized version of life that the pandemic got him, you know, all of a sudden he didn't have anything to do. He relapsed, you know. I personally, from my own experiences with the Foos, Taylor was 100% straight 100% of the time, just like he said. It was true then. I can't speak for any time outside that period, and something horrible went wrong in these last few years.
I know.
At least that's my take, you know. And we'd be in a room full of people drinking or doing substances or something, and Taylor was always the guy, you know, no thanks. I'm sober now.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, very sad.
I was a big fan of Chris Cornell, and that one blew me away.
Of the entire Seattle thing.
Yeah.
Soundgarden was the band that somehow reminded me of the gang.
Yeah.
I don't know if others ever saw that.
Yeah.
And I can't even specifically tell you what it was about them, but I used to listen to them and think of us. So I was a big fan of, needless to say.
Yeah. They're a pretty original band as well. You know? Yeah. They didn't sound like a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, it sounds like we could sit down and listen to some records together sometime.
Oh yeah. We have the same taste for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you did a lot of session work. You were on Clapton's album.
Yeah. Yeah.
BB King, Stephen Stills.
Yeah.
Mangione.
You know, sometimes it's dumb luck. with Eric.
You've had a lot of luck, though.
I have. Well,
yeah.
they say luck is, meets with preparation and being in the right place at the right time.
I think it works for you.
It's worked very well for me.
Yeah.
And as I've mentioned, we've done some jamming with Clapton. we were not unknown to each other,
right?
But it wasn't like we had each other's phone numbers on speed dial either, And the gang was finishing an album at Criteria Recording in Florida with a producer named Tom Dowd, who is a whole other show, one of my favorite humans that ever walked the earth.
That's right.
Tom wanders in very casually one night and says, listen, he says, would you mind if I broke a little early? He says, Eric Clapton is my next project, and he's coming in and he's going to be working at the studio here. And I need just a few minutes with him to acclimate. We're not scheduled to start recording until tomorrow. Would you mind if we knocked off a couple hours early? I said, no, of course not. It'd be great. An hour later, he comes over. He says, Jimmy, listen, I need to talk to you for a minute. He says, Eric wants to play tonight. He said, and I need a drummer. And he remembers you. Mm-hmm. He said, would you be willing to give up some of your own mixing time and do it? Yeah. I think I would. And my drums had already left the building. My drums were on the way to a gig, and I'll thank Joe Vitale for the last of my days. Joe says, I have a set. I said, oh, Joe, thank you, man. So we got together, come into the studio. God, here's Eric. And catches me at an early moment. Because we were recording, I was at the studio early. Mm-hmm. Here's his guitar, the famous painted guitar sitting on a stand, and I can't take it. So I go over there, and I'm just, like I'm holding a baby. I'm just gingerly, because in my mind, if Eric ever saw anyone touch that guitar, he was going to have him killed on the spot, And here I am, and the door opens, and in walks Eric, and I'm like holding the goods, man. There I am. And he walks up to me and smiles, and he says, remember that night in Boston when we jammed, man? I was like, oh God, I'm off the hook. Thank God. And one by one, these musicians who we basically just had people pick up from town, filed in.
That's pretty cool.
Played.
Yeah.
And that was it. And Steady Rollin' Man's the one that made it all the way to the album.
That's old school. Yeah.
Fun stuff. But it is old school to me. Yeah. Has never been successfully replaced. Yeah. There's all kinds of wonderful new technology out there.
Yep. True.
A lot of interesting turns that music has taken. But man, to me, as a musician, you'll never replace that eyeball to eyeball thing.
Yeah.
That's still what was most important to me then, and is still today most important to me. It's the communication. Even when the gang gets together now, we talk about stuff like, well, we want to do the earbuds? Nah, let's just get together, let's just get closer on stage. That's a place that we can hear each other.
So what are you doing musically these days? I mean, where's your drum set? Do you have a studio or anything, or?
I don't have a studio.
Right.
My drums are here at the house.
Okay.
I think I'm down to about 3 sets, and some of the older ones and stuff I picked up along the way, but I still have my Slinger ones, which I guess I'm probably best known for from all the pictures over the years. Right. I have my DWs, who is my affiliation for the last 20 years has been with DW. Mm-hmm. They're the greatest. They're just unbelievable. I have a barn at this house. We've only been here not even a year. But we bought this house because the garage had room for drums, and the barn looked like could turn it into Big Pink in about 15 minutes.
Very cool.
So we're set up and ready to go here. Yeah. And when I feel the need to play, I'm 15 minutes from set up, and one of my favorite drum techs and drum technician experts lives no more than 5 minutes from here. Wow. And that was just a happy coincidence. Yeah. So when the mood strikes me, everything is ready to go here. Otherwise, I'm not a daily practice guy, and I wasn't then. Mm-hmm. There are some rehearsal space areas around, and when I need something, when, for instance, Joe will say, when the Nixon thing came up, Nixon, listen to me. What was that guy's name again? Oh, Clinton. That was his name.
Nixon.
Imagine that.
Going way back.
When the Clinton thing came up, it was like, wow, man, I better do some woodshedding. No problem. I was able to practice all weekend. Drums were ready. Everything was ready to go. Everything was perfect. All I had to do was walk in and pound. And before the 06 tour, I leased some space for a longer period of time. And it was exactly the same thing. I had a key to the door. Everything was ready to go. It was a recording studio. Anyhow, I could record if I felt like it. So everything was in place. I always feel like I can play. I had an opportunity. We spent part of the year in Arizona. I have a home in Tucson. We love it down there. And made some friends down there who ran in some circles with musicians. And there was a commonality of friendship between a friend, a guy I met down there through this musician who was a keyboard player in the opening act on the '06 tour, a guy named Johnny Rosh. Johnny is not known in the rock and roll world. His success has come more from commercials in New York City, local gigs and stuff like that. But Johnny's played with the Blues Brothers. Johnny has a wonderful resume. He's a brilliant player. He calls me. I'm coming to Tucson, man. It's the guy who I want you to be your new best friend. It's going to be his birthday, and I'm going to play. He says, why don't you come? I'll get you an invitation to the party so you guys can meet, and then it'll be settled for the rest of your lives, which it was, by the way. Sadly, he's passed, but this guy became instantly my best friend for the rest of our lives. It was just incredible. And he says, I thought you might like to maybe even do some playing. I said, we're playing at a birthday party? He goes, just watch, So he's just playing unbelievably to a bunch of people who have no idea and don't care, of how spectacularly talented this guy is, and doubles on harmonica with his other hand and sings. Steve Cropper called him the best white man singing on.
Is that right?
Whoa. Yeah, he's a great singer. So we're having this party, and there's a short break, and the next thing I know, a set of DW drums shows up next to the keyboard. How do you even do this? Well, Scott had him in the house. He was a friend of ours, the guy who became our mutual friend, had a set of DWs.
Cool.
So I played. And sometimes it works like that. And then 2 years after that, Johnny calls. He says, I want to come to town and I want to play some gigs.
Yeah.
I said, well, how do you want to do this? He says, I don't know. He says, let me make a call or two. Let me find out who I can round up. He calls me the next day. He says, well, I got Cropper. I said, listen, don't kid me about things like that, He's got Cropper. The next day after that, he's got a guy named Jeff Pevar. Name ring a bell? Jeff Pevar, he'd been with Crosby, Stills, Nash for 20-something years, and he was the P in CRP with Crosby and Raymond and Pevar. He played with Ray Charles when he was 24 years old. He's so good that it's sickening. It's like it's like being with Joe again, It's like being with the great guitar players. So we got Cropper, we got Pevar, and I wanted to get Tony Garnier from Dylan's band to play bass. Dylan was working, and we couldn't get him, which was really a shame. Johnny says, I've asked a lady to do the gig. If that's okay with you, you'll like her. Fine. I didn't know her name. Her name was Susan. I can't even remember her last name right now. What a sweetheart. Looks like an escapee from the Ramones. Turns out she's the headmistress at a music school in Manhattan, and dead serious, man. God, was she good. 5 of us arranged to meet in Tucson.
Very cool.
Here's the rules. No rehearsals, no sound checks. And you should learn some of Cropper's tunes because we might want to play them, And we went out and we did 3 shows.
What year was this?
I think 4 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. And I got to tell you, man,
it's a blast.
That's Tom King and Starfire is fun. That's just, it was no set list, no song list.
Super group.
Absolutely. Nothing but fun.
Yeah.
And everyone was in the right spirit.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And it was all really sort of in the service of Cropper, because after all, it's Cropper, So we kind of put together a set list back and forth. Okay, we figure these are Steve's, in his top 10 greatest hits. So everybody better know these in case Steve wants to play one.
Yeah.
So, what do you learn? Knock on wood, hold on, I'm coming. And how hard do you have to work to learn the songs and play them hundreds and thousands of times already, So that was the attitude we went in with. It's like, okay, let's just be prepared for that. And otherwise, let's just plan to be prepared for anything.
Yep. That's incredible. That is awesome.
So Jeff, you spent all those years with Crosby, Stills. Is there any song of his you'd like to play? This is taking place on stage in front of an audience. Okay.
So cool.
And he says, I could do Love the One You're With, 2, 3, 4, and we're going. And that's the third night we played 4 hours and 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
it was too much fun to stop,
Huh.
you know. So those times are few and far between, but they sort of validate
Sure.
why you got there, you know.
One thing about being a drummer, you never forget, you know, it's, you could as a guitar player, you know, after a long time, you know, you go, wait a minute, how did that go? You know,
The issue I find is stamina,
yeah,
for a drummer,
right.
because it's a lot of work to drum at the level I would hope to drum
Sure,
at,
definitely.
you know. So like when
Gotta be in
that,
good shape.
yeah,
Yeah.
when that particular series of gigs became a reality at that
Mhm.
moment, I practiced many hours every day from that time until everybody got into town,
Yeah,
because I wanted to be there. I
yeah,
wanted to have it if I needed it,
definitely.
you know.
I got to ask you, did you ever meet Hendrix
Once,
once?
yeah, we got 2 shows with Hendrix. Again, Mike Belkin, the manager, very casually. So you guys want to play with Hendrix? Yeah, you know. He says, well, I got Louisville and Memphis. And
Huh.
this was so long ago that
Right.
our first thought was, boy, you're talking the South, man.
Mhm.
Is this okay? Because things were not okay in those
No,
days.
you're
You know,
right.
a white band, you know, a white band went down there, it was one
Yeah.
thing. Black band went down there, was not necessarily the same. And if a long hair went down there, he was going to take
I
some,
know.
some, you know what,
Yeah.
you know. And we actually argued about it for a day or two. It was like, you know, is this safe? And Belkin finally told us, look, quit being stupid. It's worth dying to do the gig, you know. We had a rough time in both airports, man.
Really?
You know, yeah, you ought to cut your hair.
I know.
You know, that kind of stuff. And we weren't used to it. But, you know.
I was offered, I went to a CBS broadcast school that had, they had job placement. And the first job that came up was in Mississippi. And for that same very reason, I turned it down, you know, long hairs.
Yeah.
You know,
it's difficult, and it's a little hard to understand because this is 50 years later.
Right,
you know?
right.
And you talk about, has there been progress? And the answer is yes, there has been progress. I'm not one of those guys who say there's never been. There has been progress, but there's still progress that needs to be made.
Oh yeah.
50 years ago, man, it was difficult. You know, I was frankly a little surprised Hendrix would even take the shows, but you know, he's well protected. Let's put it that way. So
everybody I talked to said he was such a great guy. You know, very
couldn't have been
laid back. You know,
he was. You know it right away. There's this kinship between musicians.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes it has to be proven or shown or demonstrated or something, but it's always there. Yeah. And it's going to be there if you're worthy of it. If you don't have a big autograph book under your arm, you know, you know, oh, Mr. Hendrix, if you don't mind, I have 13 friends that would like to have your signature. As soon as you guys get past that, by you guys, I mean any 2 musicians, as soon as you get past that, it's fine. Yeah. And he was exactly like that. Wow, man, how you guys doing? Really nice to meet you. You know, we were the first time we ever met Neil Young. He was playing at a club in Cleveland, and boy, this is early. This has got to be 68. You know, and of course we try and wander in to meet him because my gosh, he's our idol already. And we walk in and Joe introduces himself. I'm a guitar player in a local band. And Neil looks up from tinkering with something and says, you into amplifiers? And that was it. You know, friends till today. Because they're both into amplifiers.
That's cool. Very cool.
That musicians have a kinship, man. And it's broader than you might think.
I got just a quick funny story something that happened to me. I covered John Mayall here in Sarasota for his 80th birthday. And I'm thinking some famous people are going to show up for this. No, but they already did for his 70th birthday. Clapton was there and all those guys. But I knew the promoter. And I went to the promoter. I says, would you have a set list? You know, I was covering the show. I was going to, you know, put it out there and do a review and everything. He says, you need a set list? Come with me. He grabs me, opens the door to his dressing room and throws me in with John Mayall, just me and him.
Funny.
So I spent that time with just me and John Mayall, and he had his famous guitar, you know, the one with the turquoise, and just sitting there, just like you said with it, Clapton, you know, but
Yeah.
it was so cool. You know, he was 80 years old and I spent his 80th birthday with John Mayall, you know.
Well, that's way cool.
Yeah.
You know, way cool. And
Yeah.
see, he recognizes in you immediately.
Yep.
Someone who's been around the block, someone who understands the conversation you're having.
Yeah.
And that's
not
all
many people do anymore, you know, which is sad, you know.
Well, it's, you know, it's
very
like,
sad.
Yeah, like everything else, it's changing.
It's changed. Yeah.
And frankly, it's the 80-year-olds who, you know, carrying that torch right
I know.
now. So it's a tenuous walk.
Yep.
At that age.
You know what I hate is when I hear like beautiful music and they're playing this crap from the 30s and 40s. I said, look, the old guys now were in Woodstock. You're supposed to be playing Woodstock music. You know, that stuff's gone. Those people are dead, man. Play Woodstock music. These guys are in their late 70s now and 80s, you know?
Yeah, right. They could use the boost.
Exactly.
I view music as an unbroken continuum. Yep. And if you want, you can go right back through Woodstock, right back through the 30s, right back into the 1800s and the 1700s.
That's true.
Right past Ellington, right past Armstrong and on. And it's boy, if you're willing to take a few minutes.
I know.
It's wonderful. It's fascinating.
I love to go back. I really do. And what burns me up is when people don't know these people, like the young people, they don't do their research. You know, they got everything at their, you know, they got the phones, they got the internet. Look them up, you know?
Well, they can, but here's the sad part. Music doesn't play the same role in younger people's lives today that it did in our own.
You're 100% right.
Boy, that's hard to swallow.
You're 100%
you know, because to me, there was music and there was nothing else. There was music.
That's why I'm still doing this.
Yeah, you know, and to be in a situation around younger people who music, well, you know, I don't listen that much, or I listen to a couple, three things that are contemporary, and I don't really care to know anything more than that. That's sad.
Yeah, it is.
But listen, they have stuff we didn't have.
Yeah.
You know, they have distractions we didn't have.
That's true.
And it's phones, it's gaming, it's whatever it is. But, you know, you see these kids, and believe me, they're dedicated to that.
Yeah.
As we were to our music. But
games.
It's sad to see the music going away. Yeah. You know, I've said sadly, it seems to me that people our age, and I suspect we're close in age. I'm a few years, I'll be 75 this summer. I'm assuming you're a bit younger than 60s. That. Okay. Yeah. It's sad that we've lived from a renaissance into the dark ages.
Yeah.
And it's really a shame.
Yeah.
But it's the way things are, and something else will come up. I know it.
And music should have gotten better, not worse, you know?
Yeah, well, I would have hoped, you know.
I was a top 40 DJ back in the late 70s. So it was still good music back then, you know. It was a nice mix of music. But today it's all crap. I'm sorry to say, it's all garbage and terrestrial radio.
See, I won't even go that far. I won't even call it garbage. It's somebody else's music.
Yeah.
That's the only way I know how to say it. I don't want to down that stuff. And I'm not, I can't find the value in a lot of hip hop. I can't find the value in a lot of rap. The easiest way to get my attention in those genres is with humor.
Yep.
The guys that throw humor in it get my attention, and then I'm willing to listen a little more deeply, and then I like it a little better.
Exactly.
But just in general, as genres, there's not much today. You got to look really, really hard to find something that you relate to on the basis of everything you've learned in your life.
And a lot of great music has died off. And you know what? I used to love jazz. It's good music. You got talented musicians, you know, and
it's different.
It's a shame. You know,
so
Jimmy, here's your final question. And I ask everybody this question. I get some very interesting answers. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, like the movie, all right, to perform, collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
One person?
Well, it could be a band. It could be 3, 4 people.
If it were one person, man. I'm going to give you two answers because I can't decide between the two.
Right.
One is I need more time with Keith Moon.
Okay.
To hang with him, to jam with him, to talk music with him, to talk life with him.
Yeah.
Keith is right here. But over here is the guy that people are not going to know as well. His name is Billy Strayhorn. Billy was keyboardist and a composer. Worked for Duke Ellington his entire life.
Okay.
Wrote things like Take the A Train. You know, I mean, he wrote some of Ellington's most famous songs.
Right.
A brilliant writer, a brilliant composer, a brilliant arranger, a Midwesterner, Pittsburgh kid. I think the most talented writer that's lived in many, many, many years. You know, would I like to sit down with Johann Sebastian Bach? Yes, I would. The dinner conversation would be stilted because I don't speak his language. But you know, I would love any of the old guys. So you could start with that, and you pick the name. It doesn't matter. They're all, you know, whether it were Beethoven or even Stravinsky, who ain't that old. There's guys who overlap that time period, of course. But it would interest me to be with any of those people, to have a Field of Dreams experience. In reality, Keith was the name that first came to mind. Billy there was never anyone like him. Yeah. He's worth it. Listen to something, you know, check out. He wrote a song called Lush Life. He was 14 when he wrote it. It's been covered by everybody from Ellington to Linda Ronstadt to just listen to that song sometime.
Okay.
See.
I'll look for
it. In that song. So as you can tell, I revere the composers.
Yeah.
When we talk about the Beatles, it's largely the writing too. Yeah. You know, as wonderful as the band was, it's also the writing.
You know, I was watching biography on Mozart yesterday on YouTube. Me and Mozart have the same birthday.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, January 27.
Cool.
And so does Nick Mason from Pink Floyd. But you know, he wrote all those pieces. It's such a short time. The guy was like 30 something when he died, you know.
Right.
But then you think of the Beatles. They did the same thing. They did that when they were in their 20s.
And to me, they did it in the same quality.
Same, you know?
And if I had to make my guess, if there's a world in 200 years, they'll still be listening to Beatles much as they'll be listening to Beethoven. I really believe that.
Isn't it hard to believe, though, that Paul McCartney's on tour again? He's selling out stadiums still. Yeah. Still selling out stadiums. And Ringo, I've been on tons of his all-star shows. You should be on that all-star list. You know that?
They're great.
You should be one of the drummers. You should drum right next to Ringo.
I'm telling you,
it might happen.
He's had some great ones.
Yeah.
He's had some great ones. And I've seen a lot of their shows. And due to my relationship with Joe, I've spent a little time with Ringo because Joe happened to marry into the family.
That's right.
So I know Ringo a bit. And he's nothing but fun.
Yep.
Nothing but fun. So,
you know, it's funny. I had a conversation with Greg Raleigh from the Santana days. And we were talking, and he says, you know, he wanted to go on tour, and he had this big band. His band had a lot of people, and it cost him a lot of money and whatever. I says, back then, I told him, I says, you know what? You'd fit perfectly in the all-star band.
Yeah, there you go.
To this day, there he is. So I'm putting the feelers out for you now, Ringo. Be Fox.
Be listening, buddy.
He could play all the cool James Gang stuff, you know?
That's right. That's right. Then I'd have to sing Funk 49.
There you go. Well, Joe was on the All-Star band. Joe was in there.
Joe was on the first All-Star band.
I saw him. I saw Joe in that band.
We sat in on that tour.
Did you really?
Again, in classical, unpredictable, classic Walsh form. Phone rings at 5 PM. What are you doing, man? Come on down here. I think we can do a song on Ringo show. You know, Okay.
Nobody does Joe like you. And let me tell you, that's a
Joe's
great
easy.
impression, man.
Easy.
Jimmy, I want to thank you, man, for being on the show today. I want to thank John Hurt for arranging
By
the
all
interview.
means.
Thank you,
You,
John.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good guy. I want to tell everybody to go to the License Plate Hall of Fame. Check you out.
Wherever it is. And in Leavenworth at the prison.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I never thought about that.
Watch people make license plates. I like it.
Jimmy, stay in touch, man.
Do it, Ray. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
It's been my pleasure. I hope you and Joe get back together again and do some stuff, because that'll be wonderful.
We'll talk soon. Thank you.
And if you get a hold of him, tell him I've been looking for him for a long time, but he's a hard guy to get a hold of. Tell him I've done all of Barnstorm. I did Kenny and Joe, but
yeah, you'd think you painted him into a corner by now.
There you go.
The only one left. So, well, when I see him, I'll tell him.
All right, Jimmy. Thanks so much, man, for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Take care.
All right, you too. Bye-bye now.